In the last video, we set up a form and then we validated some fields and we collected all the data. And as promised, I told you in the next video, we're going to send that data to the server to get processed. Now, it would take a lot of effort to set up a server and a database to actually store this data into a database and do something with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a fake return or a file that we'll get back whenever we send this data to the server. So usually this will be quite a bit of programming on the back end of a web server that would take the data and throw it into the database. We're going to completely ignore the data and we're just going to send back a message saying success. So I created a new file and I called it submit.json. And this is called JSON data, and JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So you can study more about that. Then back in our form down here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a request so that we can send this data back to the server, and we're going to open it, and this is the address we're going to set it to. So this has to be the same name as our file here. And then we kind of set the header, tell the server what kind of information is coming. And then we have this here, and this is going to happen and check to see if the success was worked or if it didn't work. And then down here, we are going to send the data to the server. So this is pretty advanced code for JavaScript, but you can just type it in as you see it here. Make sure that this name here matches up with this name here, and I'm going to log it out as well. And so let's go ahead and see what happens. So you can see I'm on my page, and I filled it out, and I'm going to click submit. And you can see that the form submitted successfully. We also have this data. If we click over into this network tab, down here, we have this post request down here that went to the submit.json, and that shows you it went over the network. Now, what we just did is called AJAX, AJAX. So usually when you click submit, when we don't have this prevent default, the data gets sent in a request to the web server. The web server generates a new HTML page and it sends the HTML page. So the full page gets refreshed with a new HTML. With AJAX, we send the request using JavaScript to the server. The server responds with some data, and we grab that data, and we can modify the page. In this case, we're just popping up an alert box onto the page, but we can modify the page saying the form has been submitted instead of refreshing the full page. Now, besides refreshing the full page, we could modify the page. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a div tag, and I'm going to give it an ID of message. So we have a div tag with an ID of message, and we can leave it blank for now. And then down here, instead of alerting the user, we can change what's inside of the message. So now, instead of the alert box that I did up here, I'm going to get this response back and parse it. And then I'm going to select that message, this div tag that I added here. I'm going to select that message and I'm going to change the HTML inside of it to the message that came back in the response. And that happens to be success. So let's try clicking the submit button again. And now you can see that we have success up here. And even when we go to this inspector has been updated with our HTML. But if I refresh the page, this message is gone. So that's how AJAX works. Instead of reloading the full page, we send some data to the server, it responds, and then we use some JavaScript to modify the page. Now, I just added a little message right there. There's something more drastic that we can do. And that is by selecting our form tag, we're going to get that element by ID, and we're gonna erase all the HTML that's inside of it. Now we have all this HTML. We're going to try to, we'll go to the console here. We'll go ahead and submit our query. And now we just see success, and all of the HTML inside of the form is gone. So you can see even here in this inspector, it doesn't have any HTML inside the form. But don't worry, if you give it a quick refresh, we start off with a brand new page and all the HTML is there. So hopefully you've had some fun and you can see how we can use AJAX and JavaScript to modify the page and create a much more interactive web page. Okay, now the last thing that we'll do is we'll take all of our JavaScript and we'll put it in a separate file. So we want to copy or cut all the information in between the script tags. So I'm just going to do a Control X or Command X. I'm going to create a new file. And this will be form.js. So we'll put the JS extension, and that's really important that we use the JS extension. And we can paste that information in. And now when we go back here, we can delete all the space between our script tags, and we just add a source, and we can just fill in the name of our file. And this is just like with our images or our style sheets or anything else, so that we can move our JavaScript to a separate file. So now that we're back, we can go ahead and try it out and make sure it works the way it did before. And it still works. Now, one thing to note, in our inspector, we could see that we have the missing HTML inside of our form. But when we go right click and we view our page source, we'll see the original HTML that came from the server. Whereas in the inspector, we see what the HTML actually is like after the JavaScript has modified it. So that's one key difference. If you're viewing your page source, you're always going to see exactly what the server sent versus inside the inspector, you'll see how that your HTML has been modified by the JavaScript.